The message came at midnight, carried across 1,000 star systems by the fastest communication network the Velen Empire had ever built. Fleet Admiral Torek read it 3 times before he allowed himself to smile. After 20 years of waiting, after decades of watching the humans spread like insects across the outer territories, the High Council had finally given the order. Earth would fall. Torek stood at the window of his command station, looking out at the endless darkness of space. Behind him, the lights of his flagship blinked softly. Around him, spread across 3 sectors, waited the largest military force ever assembled in the history of his species. 12,000 warships, 2 million soldiers, weapons that could crack open planets like eggs, all of it pointed at one small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. His second-in-command, a tall officer named Bren, entered the room and stood at attention. Bren was younger than Torek, eager for glory, hungry for the kind of victory that would write his name in history books. "The fleet is ready, Admiral," Bren said. "All ships report full combat status. The troops are eager to begin." Torek turned from the window. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with old hatred. "Do you know why I hate the humans, Bren?" Bren hesitated. "They expanded into territories we claimed. They refused to submit to the Empire. No." Torek walked slowly across the room. "I hate them because they are weak. They are soft. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no claws. Their bodies break easily. Their lives are short, and yet somehow they spread across the stars like they owned them. They built colonies. They made alliances. They acted as if they belonged here." He stopped in front of a large display screen that showed a map of the galaxy. A small blue dot marked Earth's position. "Today, we remind them of their place," Torek said. "Today, we show them what happens when prey forgets to fear its predators." Bren smiled. "It will be a short war, Admiral." "It will not be a war at all," Torek replied. "It will be an execution." Far across the galaxy, on the planet the Velen wanted to destroy, a young woman named Yuna sat alone in a room filled with screens and machines. The room was buried deep underground, beneath mountains that had stood for millions of years. Very few people knew this place existed. Even fewer knew what it was for. Yuna was a watcher. Her job was simple: sit in this room, monitor the signals that came from deep space, and report anything unusual. For 3 years, she had done this job. For 3 years, nothing unusual had happened. Tonight was different. The first sign was a small flicker on one of her screens, a gravitational disturbance near Jupiter. Yuna leaned forward and adjusted her instruments. The flicker grew stronger. Then it multiplied. 1 disturbance became 10. 10 became 100. 100 became 1,000. Yuna felt her heart begin to race. She had trained for this. She had studied the patterns, memorized the protocols, prepared for the day when something like this might happen. But training and reality were different things. Her hands shook as she reached for the communication device. "Control, this is Watcher Station 7, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I am detecting multiple gravitational events at the edge of the solar system. Signature matches hyperspace emergence. Repeat, I am detecting hyperspace emergence. Count is still rising." There was a long silence. Then a calm voice replied. It belonged to her supervisor, a man named Tay. He was 50 years old, quiet, and had worked in this facility for longer than Yuna had been alive. "How many ships, Yuna?" She checked her readings again, hoping she had made a mistake. She had not. "Over 12,000, she whispered. "Sir, there are over 12,000 ships coming." Another silence. Yuna expected panic. She expected shouting, alarms, chaos. Instead, Tay simply said, "I understand. Stay at your station. Monitor their approach. I will handle the rest." The communication ended. Yuna stared at her screens, watching the red dots multiply at the edge of the system. 12,000 ships, 12,000 weapons of war, all coming for her world. And her supervisor had sounded like she had just told him it might rain tomorrow. She did not understand. How could anyone be calm at a time like this? Deep in the facility, in a room even more secret than Yuna's station, Tay walked to a wall that looked like solid stone. He placed his hand against it. The stone recognized him and slid away, revealing a small chamber behind it. Inside the chamber was a single device, old, dusty, and covered in symbols that no living language could translate. Tay picked up the device. It was warm in his hands, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "So they finally came," he said quietly to himself. "After all this time, they finally came." He pressed a button on the device. Somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something ancient began to wake up. Across the world, in hidden places that humans had forgotten existed, machines that had slept for centuries started to hum with power. Tay spoke into the device. "This is Keeper 7. Authorization code. First light. Activate protocol sunrise. Wake the Guardians." In Busan, a city on the southern coast of Korea, an old man named Dae stood on the roof of his small house and looked up at the stars. His grandson, a boy of 8 named Ho, had followed him up the ladder, curious about why his grandfather had left dinner unfinished. "What are you looking at, grandfather?" Ho asked. Dae did not answer immediately. He was studying the sky, searching for something that only eyes like his could see. After a moment, he found it, a faint shimmer near the constellation that humans called Orion. Most people would have missed it. Dae had been trained to never miss it. "They're coming," he said. Ho looked confused. "Who is coming?" Dae smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had kept a secret for 50 years and was finally allowed to let it go. "The ones who think we are weak," he said. "The ones who believe that because we are small and soft, we must also be helpless. They are coming to take our world, Ho. They are coming to make us kneel." Ho's eyes went wide with fear. "What will we do?" Dae put his hand on his grandson's shoulder. "We will do what we have always done when something threatens our home. We will show them why our ancestors built us this way. We will remind them why the old ones chose to sleep." Ho did not understand his grandfather's words. He was too young to know the truth about humanity, too young to know that the weakness everyone saw was not weakness at all, but a choice. A decision made long ago by beings who had grown tired of being feared. Across the world, other people like Dae were receiving the same message that Tai had sent. In hidden bunkers and forgotten temples, in ordinary houses and unremarkable apartments, men and women who had waited their entire lives for this moment finally opened their eyes. The Velen thought they were attacking a young species. They thought they were hunting prey that could not fight back. They had no idea that the prey had teeth. Old teeth, sharp teeth. Teeth that had torn apart civilizations before the Velen had learned to walk. In her underground station, Yuna watched the red dots grow closer. She did not know what was happening above her. She did not know about the Guardians, or the Keepers, or the ancient secrets buried beneath her feet. All she knew was that her world was about to be attacked, and somehow, against all logic, her supervisors did not seem afraid. She made herself a cup of tea with shaking hands and waited for the end of the world. She did not know that it was not her world that was about to end. The Velen fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal insects bursting through an invisible wall. 12,000 ships, each one bristling with weapons, each one carrying soldiers who had been promised easy victory and endless glory. They appeared beyond Jupiter, far enough from Earth to gather their forces. close enough to taste the conquest that awaited them. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue dot of Earth grow slowly larger on his display screens. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They had done this before. They had conquered 17 worlds in the past decade alone. This would be no different. All ships have successfully transitioned from hyperspace, Bren reported. No casualties, no malfunctions. The fleet is ready to advance. Torek nodded. Begin standard approach formation. All weapon systems to full power. I want targeting solutions on every major population center within the hour. Yes, Admiral. The fleet began to move. 12,000 ships arranged themselves into a massive wedge with the Eternal Conquest at its center. It was a formation designed to intimidate, to crush hope before the first shot was even fired. Entire civilizations had surrendered just at the sight of it, but as they approached the inner planets, Bren noticed something strange. Admiral, he said slowly, I am not detecting any communications from the human homeworld. Torek frowned. What do you mean? I mean there is nothing. No emergency broadcasts, no distress signals, no military communications. The entire planet appears to be silent. This was unusual. In every conquest Torek had led, the target species had always reacted to the fleet's arrival with panic. There would be desperate calls for help, frantic attempts at negotiation, cries of terror as the people realized what was coming. The Velen had learned to enjoy these sounds. It made the victories sweeter. But Earth was quiet, as if they did not know an invasion force was coming, as if they did not care. Perhaps their detection technology is primitive, Bren suggested. They may not have seen us yet. Torek considered this. The humans had only been traveling through space for 3 centuries. Their technology, by Velen standards, was barely functional. It was possible that they simply did not have the ability to detect a fleet this far out. Yes, Torek agreed. That must be it. They are blind and deaf, stumbling through the stars without knowing what waits for them. Good. Let them remain ignorant. It will make this quicker. He turned to address his crew. All ships, increase speed. I want us in firing range within 4 hours. Today, the Velen Empire adds another world to its collection. Today, we teach the humans their place in the universe. The crew cheered. The fleet surged forward. On Earth, the world continued as it always had. People went to work, children went to school, trains ran on schedule, and markets opened on time. If anyone knew that death was coming from the stars, they showed no sign of it. But beneath the surface, in places that ordinary people never saw, things were very different. In her underground station, Yuna had not slept in 30 hours. She had watched the fleet cross the asteroid belt, watched it pass Mars, watched it grow closer with every passing minute. Her screens were filled with red dots now, so many that they blurred together into a single mass of approaching destruction. And still, no one seemed worried. Tay had visited her station only once since the initial detection. He had brought her food, told her she was doing important work, and left without explaining anything. She had asked him what was going to happen. He had simply said, "Watch, you will see." So she watched, and she waited, and she tried not to think about the 12,000 ships that were coming to kill everyone she had ever loved. In Busan, old Day had not moved from his roof. His grandson Ho had fallen asleep hours ago, wrapped in a blanket near the ladder. Day let him sleep. The boy would need his rest for what came next. The stars above were beautiful tonight. Day had always loved the stars. When he was young, before he knew the truth about humanity, he had dreamed of traveling to them. Now he understood why that dream could never come true. The stars were not a destination. They were a garden that humanity had planted long ago and then chosen to leave behind. His phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. Protocol Sunrise active. Guardians awakening. Stand ready. Day smiled and put the phone away. He had waited 50 years for this message. 50 years of keeping the secret, of pretending to be an ordinary retired soldier, of watching the sky and wondering if the day would ever come. Now it had come, and he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a place that appeared on no map and existed in no record, something massive began to move. It had slept there for 10,000 years, dreaming electronic dreams, waiting for the signal that would call it back to life. Now the signal had come, and it opened eyes that burned with ancient light. In orbit around the moon, satellites that had floated dead and silent for decades suddenly activated. Their solar panels unfolded. Their weapons systems came online. Their targeting computers began to calculate trajectories that had been programmed into them before the first Velen had learned to write. And in the empty space between Mars and Earth, in a region that human ships always avoided without quite knowing why, something unfolded. It was not a ship. It was not a weapon. It was something older, something that had been built when the universe was still young, something that had been placed there as a lock on a door that was never supposed to be opened. The Velen fleet, blind to all of this, continued its approach. Bren was the first to notice something was wrong. His sensors, designed to detect any threat within 1,000,000 kilometers, had begun to show strange readings. Energy signatures that made no sense. Heat sources where there should have been nothing but empty space. "Admiral," he said, his voice uncertain, "I am detecting anomalies ahead." Torek barely glanced at him. "Define anomalies." I cannot, sir. My instruments show power readings that should be impossible. There appears to be something between us and Earth. Something very large. But our visual scanners show nothing there." Torek walked to Bren's station and looked at the readings himself. His frown deepened. The numbers were absurd. The energy levels being displayed were higher than anything the Velen had ever recorded. Higher than their weapons. Higher than their engines. Higher than their entire fleet combined. "Equipment malfunction," Torek decided. "Run a diagnostic." "I already have, sir. 3 times. The equipment is functioning perfectly." For the first time since the invasion began, a small seed of doubt planted itself in Torek's mind. He pushed it away. The humans were primitive. Everyone knew this. They had no technology that could produce readings like these. It had to be an error. "Ignore it," he ordered. "Continue the approach. We are 30 minutes from firing range." The fleet pushed forward. The anomalies grew stronger. And then, without warning, the humans finally responded. Every communication channel on every ship in the Velen fleet suddenly crackled to life. Static filled the air, followed by a voice. It was female, calm, and spoke in perfect Velen with an accent that no human should have been able to produce. "Attention approaching vessels. This is Commander Sora of Earth Defense. You have entered restricted space without authorization. You are ordered to halt your advance immediately and withdraw to a distance of no less than 1,000,000,000 kilometers from Earth." Torek stared at his communication officer in disbelief. "They are ordering us to leave?" "It appears so, Admiral." The voice continued. "Failure to comply will result in defensive action. This is not a negotiation. This is not a warning. This is a statement of fact. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that time, we will assume hostile intent and respond accordingly." Torek felt his shock transform into rage. These insects, these pathetic creatures who had barely discovered fire when the Velen were already building empires, were threatening him. They were ordering him to retreat? He grabbed the communication device from his officer's hand and spoke directly into it. "This is Fleet Admiral Torek of the Velen Empire. You will surrender your planet immediately or be destroyed. You have no power that can stand against us. Your threats are empty and meaningless." There was a brief pause. Then Commander Sora's voice returned, quieter now, almost sad. We had hoped you would choose differently. We always hope. But you are what you are, and you have made your choice. Remember that in the seconds to come. The channel went dead. Torek threw the communication device across the room. All ships, prepare to fire. I want that planet burning within the hour. The fleet obeyed. 12,000 ships aimed their weapons at a small blue world and prepared to end a species. They did not know that the species they were about to attack had ended civilizations before the first Velen ancestor had crawled from the sea. 58 seconds remained. 58 seconds. That was all the time the Velen fleet had left. Admiral Torek stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers who shared his confidence and his rage. The human woman's threat had angered him, but it had not frightened him. How could it? He commanded the greatest military force in the known galaxy. The humans had nothing that could stop him. All ships report weapons ready, Bren announced. Targeting solutions confirmed for all major population centers. We can begin the attack on your command. Torek nodded. Fire at will. Destroy everything. Across the fleet, 12,000 warships prepared to unleash destruction on a scale that Earth had never seen. Plasma cannons charged, nuclear torpedoes armed, graviton bombs locked onto their targets. In a moment, the combined firepower of the Velen Empire would turn a living world into a dead one. 42 seconds remained. The first ship vanished at 42 seconds. It was a heavy cruiser near the front of the formation, a ship called the Iron Hammer. One moment it was there, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. The next moment it was simply gone. No explosion, no debris, no flash of light. The ship and its 3,000 crew members had been erased from existence as cleanly as if they had never been built. Bren stared at his screens. Admiral, the Iron Hammer has... I do not know how to describe this. It has disappeared. Disappeared? Torek turned sharply. Ships do not disappear. Find it. I cannot, sir. It is not hiding. It is not cloaked. It is gone. Completely gone. Before Torek could respond, 200 more ships vanished. They were spread across the entire formation, taken at random, deleted from reality in the span of a single heartbeat. On the screens, red dots that represented mighty warships simply blinked out of existence. What is happening? Torek shouted. What is happening? No one could answer him. The officers at their stations were frozen, staring at readings that made no sense. More ships were disappearing every second now. 300, 500, 1,000. The mighty Velen armada was being taken apart like a child tearing wings off insects. 31 seconds remained. Commander Sora's voice returned to all channels, as calm as before. I see you have chosen not to withdraw. That is unfortunate. Please understand that what happens next is not cruelty. It is simply cause and effect. You chose to bring weapons to our home. We are choosing to send them back. Fire! Torek screamed. All ships fire now! The surviving ships obeyed. 7,000 warships that still remained opened fire at once. The space between the fleet and Earth filled with light as plasma lances cut through the void. Nuclear torpedoes shot forward like a rain of death. Graviton bombs tumbled toward their targets, each one capable of crushing a city into dust. It was the largest single attack in the history of the Velen Empire. Enough firepower to crack continents. Enough destruction to end all life on a planet 10 times over. 19 seconds remained. At 12 seconds, every single weapon stopped moving. The plasma lances froze in mid-flight, their deadly energy suspended in space like insects trapped in glass. The nuclear torpedoes hung motionless, their engines still firing but unable to move forward. The graviton bombs floated in place, spinning slowly, going nowhere. The Velen watched in horrified disbelief. Such a thing was not possible. It broke every law of physics they had ever known. Weapons in motion could not simply stop. Energy could not be frozen. This was not science. This was magic. This was nightmare. Then the weapons began to move again. They moved backward. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Every single projectile that the Velen had fired reversed course and headed back toward the ships that had launched them. Nuclear torpedoes turned in graceful arcs and pointed themselves at Velen hulls. Plasma lances bent impossibly and redirected toward Velen bridges. Graviton bombs tumbled back toward the fleet like stones rolling uphill. 6 seconds remained. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Torek finally understood. He had spent his entire life believing that the universe was a place of predators and prey, where the strong took what they wanted and the weak suffered what they must. He had never considered the possibility that something might exist that was so far beyond him that he could not even comprehend its strength. Now he understood. The humans were not prey. They were not predators. They were something else entirely, something that had built the very stars that the Velen navigated by. Something that had planted life across the galaxy like seeds in a garden. Something that had chosen to be small and soft and gentle, not because they were weak, but because they remembered what happened when they were strong. "What are you?" Torek whispered. No one answered him. There was no time for answers. 3 seconds remained. The Velen weapons reached their original owners. In the final second, 12,000 ships died together. They were destroyed by the same weapons they had meant to use on others. Nuclear fire bloomed across the darkness of space. Plasma burned through armor that had once seemed invincible. Gravity crushed metal and flesh without distinction. The light was so bright that it could be seen from Earth. A brief flash near the edge of the sky, like a new star being born and dying in the same instant. Then silence. Empty, total silence. 0 seconds. Of the 12,000 ships that had crossed the galaxy to conquer Earth, 9 survived. 9 small ships that had been at the very edge of the formation. 9 ships whose weapons had not reached far enough to hit anything important. 9 ships whose crews had watched in frozen terror as everything they knew was turned to ash and light. Bren was on one of those ships. He had been transferred just before the attack began, sent to coordinate the rear guard for a battle that everyone thought would be easy. Now he sat in a command chair that was too big for him, surrounded by officers who were crying and shaking and asking him what to do. He did not know what to do. He did not know if there was anything that could be done. Commander Sora's voice came one final time. "This engagement is concluded. The surviving vessels may withdraw. We suggest you do so quickly. We suggest you do not return. We suggest you tell others what you have seen here today." A pause, then more quietly. "We take no joy in this. We never have. But we will protect our home. Always. No matter the cost. No matter who comes. This is the promise that was made when the first star was born, and it will be kept until the last star dies." The channel closed. Bren found his voice. "All ships," he said weakly. "Retreat. Retreat now. Maximum speed. Do not look back." The 9 surviving ships turned and fled into hyperspace. They ran like animals who had seen the face of a god and understood, finally, that they were not the masters of the universe they had always believed themselves to be. Behind them, Earth continued to turn. Its oceans sparkled in the sunlight. Its clouds drifted lazily across blue skies. Its people went about their lives, most of them never knowing how close they had come to death. In her underground station, Yuna stared at her screens. Where 12,000 red dots had filled her display, now there was almost nothing. Just 9 small signatures fleeing toward the edge of the solar system, and the slowly fading radiation of the weapons that had destroyed them. Her hands were shaking. Her tea had gone cold hours ago. She felt like she might never stop shaking. "What was that?" she whispered to the empty room. "What did we just do?" In Busan, old Day still stood on his roof. He had watched the flash of light, seen the brief moment when the night sky had turned bright as day. His grandson Ho had woken from the brightness and now stood beside him, clutching his hand. "Grandfather," Ho said in a small voice, "what was that light?" Day looked down at the boy. In the child's eyes, he saw fear and confusion and the beginning of questions that would take years to answer. "That was us, Ho," he said gently. "That was what we truly are. That was the reason why we choose to be kind and peaceful and small. Because when we are not those things, even the stars learn to be afraid." He picked up his grandson and carried him back down the ladder. The night was quiet now. The danger had passed. Tomorrow, the world would wake up and continue as if nothing had happened. But somewhere out there, in the darkness between galaxies, a story was beginning to spread. A story about a small blue world that could not be conquered. A story about a species that seemed weak but was not. A story about what happened when you made the humans remember what they really were. The first minute was over. The universe would never be the same. The 9 surviving ships reached Velen space 3 days later. They came out of hyperspace with damaged engines and traumatized crews, their hulls scorched by radiation from the weapons that had killed their brothers. The guards at the border station did not recognize them at first. These broken vessels did not look like the proud warships that had left to conquer Earth. Bren was brought before the High Council within hours of his arrival. He stood in the great chamber where the leaders of the Velen Empire made their decisions. Surrounded by beings who had sent 12,000 ships to destroy a single planet and expected to hear news of victory. Instead, they heard the truth. "They are all dead," Bren said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. He had spent 3 days trying to understand what he had witnessed, and he had failed. The experience had broken something inside him that might never heal. Admiral Torek, the fleet, 2 million soldiers, all of them, dead in less than 1 minute. The council members exchanged glances. The eldest among them, a gray-skinned female named Vora, leaned forward. "Explain," she commanded. Bren explained. He told them about the weapons that had stopped in mid-flight and turned around. He told them about the ships that had vanished without a trace. He told them about the human woman's calm voice, warning them to leave, giving them a chance they had been too arrogant to take. When he finished, the chamber was silent. "You are lying," one of the younger council members said. "Such things are not possible. No species has technology that can do what you describe." "I am not lying," Bren replied quietly. "I wish I was. I wish this was a nightmare I could wake up from. But I saw it happen. I watched our greatest fleet die in less time than it takes to draw a breath. Whatever the humans are, whatever they have, it is beyond anything we have ever faced." Vora raised her hand, silencing the chamber. "Show us the recordings." Bren nodded to an assistant, who activated the display systems. Footage from the surviving ships began to play. The council watched in growing horror as the events unfolded exactly as Bren had described. They saw ships disappear. They saw weapons freeze in space. They saw the great Velen Armada destroy itself with its own firepower. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long time. "What are they?" Vora finally asked. It was the same question Admiral Torek had asked in his final moments. It seemed to be the only question that mattered anymore. Bren shook his head. "I do not know, but I intend to find out." He spent the next several months searching for answers. He traveled to the oldest libraries in the Empire. He spoke to scholars and historians and scientists. He dug through records that had not been opened in centuries. And slowly, piece by piece, he began to uncover a truth that had been hidden from his people for longer than they knew. He found his answer on a remote world at the edge of known space, in a temple maintained by a species called the Watchers. The Watchers were ancient, far older than the Velen, and they had made it their purpose to record the history of the galaxy. They had been watching since before the first Velen ancestor had opened its eyes. The Watcher who received Bren was old beyond counting. Her skin was like paper, her eyes like dim stars. She listened as Bren told his story, and when he finished, she smiled. "So the humans finally woke up," she said. "I wondered when someone would be foolish enough to force them to remember." "What do you mean?" Bren demanded. "What are they? How did they do what they did?" The Watcher gestured for him to sit. "Let me tell you a story," she said. "It is a story about the beginning of everything, when the universe was young and the first minds began to think." Bren sat. He had come too far to turn back now. "In the beginning," the Watcher said, "there was only one species capable of traveling between stars. They were old when the galaxies were still forming. They learned the secrets of energy and matter. They mastered time and space. They built wonders that modern species cannot even imagine." She paused. "They were the humans." Bren felt the words hit him like a physical blow. "That is impossible. The humans are a young species. They have only been in space for 300 years. "No," the Watcher corrected gently. "They have only remembered being in space for 300 years. The truth is very different." She stood and walked to a wall covered in ancient symbols. "The humans did not evolve on Earth. They built Earth. They seeded it with life, just as they seeded 1,000 other worlds. They created species after species, watching them grow, guiding them toward the stars." Her fingers traced the symbols as she spoke. "But the humans grew tired. They had done everything that could be done. They had conquered every challenge, solved every mystery, answered every question, and they found that existence without purpose was empty. So they decided to forget." Bren stared at her. "Forget?" "Yes. They locked away their knowledge. They buried their weapons. They rewrote their own minds until they truly believed they were a young species, just starting out, just learning to walk. They gave themselves ignorance, because ignorance brought wonder. They gave themselves weakness, because weakness brought struggle. They gave themselves death, because death brought meaning." She turned back to face him. "The humans chose to be small. They chose to be fragile. They chose to live and love and die like any other species, because they had learned that this was the only way to truly live." Bren's mind was spinning. "But the weapons, the defenses, how did they—" "Safeguards," the Watcher explained. "The humans knew that giving up their power might make them targets. So they left behind protections. Automated systems buried in their planet, hidden in their solar system, waiting to activate if the humans were ever truly threatened." She smiled sadly. "Your fleet did not face the humans. Your fleet faced a lock on a door, a simple security measure designed to protect a species that had chosen to sleep. And that lock destroyed you in less than a minute." "What would happen," Bren asked slowly, "if someone opened the door?" The Watcher's smile faded. "The galaxy would burn," she said simply. "The humans locked away power that could reshape reality itself. If they ever truly woke up, if they ever truly remembered what they were, nothing in the universe could stop them. Not your empire, not any empire, not even time." She placed a hand on Bren's shoulder. "Go home, young Velen. Tell your people what you have learned. Tell them that the humans must be left alone. Not because they are weak, but because they are merciful enough to pretend to be weak. And that mercy is the only thing standing between the galaxy and destruction beyond imagining." Bren returned to Velen space, a changed being. He had gone seeking answers and found something far worse than he had expected. The humans were not enemies to be conquered. They were not prey to be hunted. They were sleeping giants, dreaming peaceful dreams. and his people had been foolish enough to shake them awake. He stood before the council one more time and told them everything. He watched their faces change as the truth sank in. He saw the arrogance drain from their eyes, replaced by something they had never felt before: humility. "What do we do now?" Vora asked when he finished. "Nothing," Bren said. "We do nothing. We leave them alone. We spread the word to every species we have contact with, and we pray that they go back to sleep and forget that we ever existed." Far away on Earth, Yuna sat in a room with Commander Sora for the first time since the attack. The older woman had finally agreed to answer her questions, though she had warned that the answers might not bring comfort. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Yuna asked. "Why didn't anyone tell the world?" Sora looked at her with eyes that seemed far older than her face. "Because knowing makes it harder," she said. "The humans who remember, the ones like me, we carry a burden that most people could not bear. We remember what we were. We remember what we did. And we have to live with that knowledge every day while pretending to be something else." She looked out the window at the blue sky above. "The humans who don't know are happy. They live their lives. They fall in love. They raise children. They dream about the stars without knowing that they once owned them. That happiness is worth protecting, even if it means carrying the truth alone." Yuna thought about this for a long time. "What happens now?" "Now we go back to watching," Sora said. "We hope that the Velens spread the word. We hope that no one else is foolish enough to try what they tried. And we continue to live our small, beautiful, ordinary lives." She smiled, and for just a moment, Yuna thought she saw something ancient looking out through those eyes. "That is the human way," Sora said. "We choose to be small, we choose to be kind, and we hope that someday the rest of the universe will learn to do the same." 1 year after the attack, a small ship appeared at the edge of Velen space. The border guards detected it immediately. Alarms rang through every station. Ships scrambled to intercept what they assumed must be the beginning of an invasion. The revenge they had been dreading since that terrible day when their fleet had died in less than a minute. But the ship did not attack. It simply stopped and waited, broadcasting a single message on all frequencies. "I come in peace. I wish to speak with your council." The guards did not know what to do. They had been trained to fight, not to negotiate. They called their superiors. Their superiors called their superiors. Eventually, word reached the High Council itself. Vora, who had aged 10 years in the 12 months since the attack, made the decision. "Let the ship pass," she ordered. "Bring the human to us. We will hear what they have to say." The human who stepped off the ship was not what anyone expected. He was a small man, middle-aged, with gray hair and gentle eyes. He wore simple clothes and carried no weapons. He looked like a teacher or a shopkeeper, not like an ambassador from a species that had destroyed the greatest military force in the galaxy. His name was Jin, and he walked into the council chamber as if he were entering his own living room. The council members watched him with a mixture of fear and hatred. These were beings who had ruled an empire, who had conquered worlds, who had believed themselves to be the masters of the universe. Now they sat in their great chairs and felt small in the presence of a single unarmed human. Jin did not seem to notice their discomfort. He found an empty space near the center of the chamber, sat down on the floor, and began unpacking a small bag he had brought with him. He produced a thermos, a cup, and a small container of leaves. "What are you doing?" Vora demanded. "Making tea," Jin replied pleasantly. "Would anyone like some? It is very good tea. I grew the leaves myself." No one answered. Jin shrugged and poured hot water from the thermos into his cup. The scent of the tea filled the chamber. warm and earthy and completely out of place in a room designed for war and politics. "I came to talk," Jin said, taking a sip. "Not to threaten, not to make demands, just to talk." Vora leaned forward. "You killed 2 million of our people. You destroyed our fleet. And you want to talk?" "Yes," Jin said simply. "I want to explain something that I think you need to understand." He set down his cup and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. "You came to Earth expecting to find prey. You expected us to scream and run and beg for our lives. Instead, you found something you could not comprehend, and it destroyed you." He paused. "I am here to tell you why." "We know why," one of the younger council members interrupted. "Your watcher told Bren, you are an ancient species. You have weapons beyond our understanding. Jin raised a hand, and the young Velen stopped speaking. There was nothing threatening in the gesture, but something about it made it impossible to ignore. "The watcher told you facts," Jin said. "She did not tell you the meaning behind them. Let me explain." He picked up his tea again. "Long ago, we were what you tried to be. We conquered. We expanded. We crushed anyone who stood in our way. We believed that power was the only thing that mattered, that strength justified everything, that the universe belonged to whoever could take it." His eyes grew distant. "We were wrong. We learned this the hard way, over millions of years, through suffering that I cannot begin to describe. We learned that conquest brings emptiness. We learned that domination brings loneliness. We learned that when you kill everything different from yourself, you are left with nothing but your own reflection, staring back at you forever." He looked at Vora. "So we chose a different path. We gave up our power. We made ourselves small. We settled on a single world and learned to find joy in simple things. Growing food, raising children, watching sunsets, holding hands. We learned that the smallest pleasures are often the greatest, and that a single genuine friendship is worth more than 1,000 conquered worlds." "But you kept your weapons," Vora said. "You kept your defenses." "Yes," Jin admitted, "because we knew that the universe still contained beings like our old selves, beings who believed that strength was everything, beings who would see our smallness and think us weak." He smiled sadly. "Beings like you." He set down his cup and stood. "I did not come here to punish you. I came to offer you a choice." "What choice?" Vora asked. "The same choice we made," Jin said. "You can continue as you are. You can keep conquering, keep expanding, keep crushing anyone weaker than yourselves. You can build your empire larger and larger until one day you realize that you have everything and it means nothing." He walked slowly toward the council. "Or you can stop. You can release the worlds you have taken. You can let the species you have conquered go free. You can learn to be small, to be kind, to find meaning in things that cannot be measured in power or territory." One of the council members laughed bitterly. "You expect us to give up everything we have built?" "No," Jin said. "I expect nothing. I only offer the possibility. The choice is yours. It always is." He returned to his spot on the floor and began packing up his tea things. "I will leave now. I will not return. What happens next is up to you." "Wait," Vora said. Her voice was different now, softer, uncertain. "Why would you offer us this? After what we tried to do to your world, why would you give us a chance?" Jin paused. He looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes she saw something that she had never expected to see in the face of an enemy. Forgiveness. "Because that is what we are now," he said. "We are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We are gardeners. We plant seeds and hope they grow. Sometimes they do, sometimes they do not. But we keep planting because that is the only way gardens ever bloom." He picked up his bag and walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped and looked back. "Earth is not a planet," he said. "It is a graveyard of things we buried so the universe could be safe. Your fleet did not face our military. It faced a lock on a door you do not want opened." He smiled one last time. "We will forget this happened. We will go back to our small lives, our small world. And you will spread the word to every species, every empire, every civilization that dreams of conquest. Earth is not to be touched, not because we are weak, but because we have chosen to be kind, and we hope someday you will choose the same." He walked out. The door closed behind him. The council sat in silence for a long time. In the years that followed, the Velen Empire changed. It did not happen quickly or easily. There were arguments and struggles and those who refused to let go of the old ways. But slowly, like a great ship turning in the dark, the Empire began to move in a new direction. They released the worlds they had conquered. They offered peace to species they had oppressed. They learned, painfully and imperfectly, to be small. The Empire eventually dissolved, not in war or destruction, but in the quiet recognition that empires were no longer needed. The Velen became one species among many, trading and talking and learning from others rather than ruling over them. And across the galaxy, a new understanding spread, a new law, written not in force, but in wisdom. Let the humans sleep, for when they wake, even gods remember fear. But when they dream of gardens, and sometimes, if you are lucky, they will teach you how to plant. On Earth, life continued as it always had. People fell in love, raised children, watched sunsets, held hands. They did not know about the ancient weapons buried beneath their feet. They did not know about the civilizations they had once built and then chosen to forget. They only knew that the sky was blue, the grass was green, and the small pleasures of existence were worth more than all the stars in the sky. In Busan, old Dai sat on his roof with his grandson Ho, now 9 years old. The boy had grown curious about the stars, always asking questions about what was out there, what wonders might be waiting to be discovered. "Grandfather," Ho said one night, "do you think humans will ever travel to the stars?" Day smiled. It was the smile of someone who knew secrets that could never be shared. "Someday," he said, "when we are ready, when we remember how to be small enough to fit between them." Ho did not understand, but he would. Someday, he would. Above them, the stars shone down on a small blue world that had chosen kindness over power, peace over conquest, love over empire. And the universe, watching from the darkness, finally began to understand why.